My name is Andres, and this is the Baking Steel Test Kitchen. You guys can see, got Chef Craig here. He'll make a cameo in a few minutes. Today we are talking dough, and we are in the process. This isn't even a blog post yet, but we've been getting a lot of inquiries about faster type of dough, a little bit easier to handle. And so we think we've got something in the works that you guys can try and we can experiment together. It's really fun. And it's just like an overnight 24-hour dough. And we made a batch yesterday. It's actually not even quite 24 hours yet. It's close, it's like 21. Did a little tester out this morning, and I think it works really nicely too. And we're changing up a few variables. So we will post this recipe. We urge you guys to try it out. Pretty awesome, pretty simple, pretty big. But so we're calling this the 24-hour pizza dough. Is that a good name, Chef?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right. The 24 hours because you just need to plan it one day in advance. And it's really easy to make. But we're gonna do it for you here. If you guys have any questions, we'll pause along the way and we'll take it from there. But I'm gonna show you guys share my screen here with you, my work surface. The ingredients: flour, salt, as you can see, water, and yeast. And then we're adding oil, like an olive oil, into our dough. I'll get into the why in a few minutes, but first I want to make this for you guys. And we're going to share again. We'll share this recipe. I guess where we're going to share it. We're going to email it to you guys as a follow-up. But really, it's going to be 500 grams. We're using an all-purpose flour. And for this, we use organic Bob's all-purpose flour. Now, you can use a bread flour if you have it, even a 00. We're just trying an all-purpose just to change it up a little bit. So we've got our all-purpose flour here, and we're going to add our salt in, and we treat each ingredient individually. And once we put the salt in, we whisk it together. Okay, and that's 16 grams of sea salt, the fine sea salt. The yeast is an active dry yeast, and we add about 1 gram of yeast in, and then we whisk that together. Okay, really simple so far. And now we take our water and we add 1.5 cups. This is filtered water. This is how we drink it around here. And so we cook with it the same way. And we add it right into our batch. Take my spatula, and I'm literally just mixing this up. Maybe I will add the oil here, right? Just to keep it less messy, right? So once I get this all in, I'm gonna mix this for a minute or two. That'll make it less messy, I think. And next, what I'm gonna do, once I get all the water, it's somewhat hydrated in there, I'm gonna take my oil and just throw it in, mix it in, and continue to mix. And it's kind of resembling a little bit of a ball now. I'm gonna pour this out onto my countertop, scrape out my bowl, and literally now I'm gonna take this and just mix it and knead it for, for 2 minutes or longer. So very similar to our 72-hour dough recipe. Difference is we added some oil. We'll tell you why in a minute, but take my bench scraper now, and I'm gonna just press in the flour and everything together. And these bench scrapers are nice as I go underneath it. And kind of use my palm to try to press in. I'm trying to lose any dry clumps of flour I might have inside. So it's kind of press and scrape underneath.
We have 11 questions about how much oil you put in there.
Oh, good. Awesome. 20 grams, guys. 20 grams of oil. And I'm just pressing in. Pressing in, pressing in. And you can see it's starting to turn the color of the olive oil, right? Starting to get a little bit more golden than a typical dough. I'm gonna keep mixing this. Just for about, you can see it's starting to get really tacky, which is kind of my tell that the water's really starting to incorporate nicely into it. And after about 2 minutes of kneading this together, I think I got all the dry clumps of flour out. I'm gonna pick this up, take off my hands, okay? I'm gonna take this ball of dough and place it right back into my container, okay? And because that's the bulk of the dough, let me just wash my hands here. All right, that's the bulk of the dough. I'm gonna ferment this now. I'm gonna for 24 hours. The first, and it's early in the day, which is actually great. So I'm gonna let this sit at room temperature covered. I'm gonna cover for this. If I don't have a cover, saran wrap is great, okay? I'm gonna let this sit for about, what time is it? 11 o'clock. So around 8 o'clock tonight, 9 o'clock, I'm gonna put this into the refrigerator and let it ferment for the overnight in the fridge. So I'm gonna have a 24-hour dough essentially. So tomorrow I can bake this up. I like to divide the time up, half at room temperature and half cold. If I had to shoot out overnight, I could just put this in the fridge overnight and do a full cold fermentation. That's fine too. Ultimately, I like to end cold because as you guys know, the dough is definitely easier to handle when it's cold. So that's why I like the cold fermentation. Oh, well, that's why I like to end on a cold fermentation. A 24-hour dough only, half 12, half at room temp, half cold. Leave it in the bulk state until the next day. Does that make sense? So I'm going to pause here and we'll get to some questions, Chef.
Yes.
Great.
Bleached or unbleached flour, and does it matter?
Great question. Personally, the only time I use bleach is when I'm washing my clothes and I'm washing my whites. Other than that, if there's a bleached flour, stay away from it. Do not use it, my opinion. I just think it's literally bleach that they're using to make that flour white. So we avoid that if we can. Unbleached is my answer, final answer.
Can you freeze this dough, and if so, how and for how long?
That's a great question too. And yes, you can. I would freeze it right when I ball it up. So the next day, after 24 hours of fermentation, I'll ball it up and freeze it.
Sweet. Does instant dry yeast work as the same as active dry yeast?
I think there's a calculation you can, that's like 0.74. I'm making that up. There is some Google calculation you can look at, but for
long ferments doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter that much. You can really go 1 for 1. I wouldn't stress about that too much, but you can Google it and ask. It might even be on the package.
Does the water temp matter in a 24-hour dough?
I don't believe so, no. I think we're using room temperature water. I didn't hydrate my yeast first, which I would typically do that if I was making a quicker dough. But since I'm just doing a 24-hour ferment, no, do not hydrate it first. Temperature doesn't matter. Room temp, not cold, not hot, room temp.
If you're fermenting on the countertop, what is the temperature of your kitchen?
I like to keep it at room temperature. So for me, in the summer, it's more like 75, 76 degrees. That seems to be a good temperature. If that seems to be fine. You don't want it too warm, but I mean, I keep somewhat climate controlled in here. It does make a little bit of a difference.
Double O flour, do you need to change the amount of water?
No, I would just keep it the same.
Can you use sourdough?
Yeah, so if we're going to substitute sourdough instead of yeast, if I'm using 500 grams of flour and 325, because this is a different calculation, 325 grams of water, I reduce each of those by 50 grams, is that right? And add 100 grams of starter in. So reduce equal amounts of flour, water, add in that amount of sourdough. Boom, nailed it.
If you're using whole wheat or rye flour, how much would you put into the recipe?
Ooh, that's a great question. I like to substitute 5, 10, 15% of that into my flour mass. So if I'm using 500 grams of flour all purpose, I might substitute in 10% of that into wheat, or 5% spelt, or just don't go too high, because what happens is those other flours can absorb the water differently and it can become too dry. So we, 5 or 10 or 15, even 20% tops of substitutions.
Any stretch and folds with the dough?
None. Our recipe was based on the original, like Jim Leahy, which is like a genius recipe. He called it the no knead. And what he did is literally like he actually didn't even knead it as much as we did originally here. He kind of just really incorporates the flour and the water together and lets it sit there. Now, you could add some folds that's going to toughen the dough up a little bit. We just kind of skip that step altogether. It keeps it simple and keeps that crust really, really light and airy and beautiful.
I can't get my crust to brown on the bottom. Someone said to add water to the dough. Suggestions?
Great. Wow. Well, that we could jump down a rabbit hole on that one. I need to know, I guess there's some other sub questions to that. Are you using a baking steel? Are you preheating your steel for an hour? Let me know if you can answer back on those.
Maybe flour and too much flour on the bottom of the crust too.
Yeah, one common thing, the wooden peel, we flour this up with like flour and semolina flour, so your dough slides like a hockey puck. If I use too much, that's going to get caked on that undercrust, which almost acts like a barrier between your steel and your dough. So it's not going to help it cook as much. So while the goal is to get it into the oven, you want to do it with less flour as possible, the least amount as possible.
How many pizzas was it made with that dough you just made?
That will make probably 3 or 4 pizzas, depending on the size.
Cool. Nice.
Cool. All right. Good. All right. So in any case, what I'm going to do now is I made this dough yesterday in advance because I knew we were doing class. You can see. So I did an 8-hour room temperature ferment, and then I followed it with about 12-hour cold ferment. This is what we got. So it smells really nice. I'm going to make a dough ball with this now. Show you guys what I would do the next day. When we're making our dough balls, we do these 3 or 4 hours in preparation of making pizza, because this dough, once you fold it and work the glutens a little bit, it needs to relax and rest at room temperature for several hours before it can be baked. So my recommendation is at least 4 hours. So here we are at 11, call it noon, 11:30. We're gonna have dinner tonight. This is great. I can make my dough ball, and this dough will be ready 4 or 5 o'clock tonight. Beautiful to stretch. And if I'm not making it tonight, I can just put these back into the fridge as well. But let's do a dough ball together. I'll show you how we do it. And this takes practice. And by the way, if I use store-bought dough, I'm going to include this step, okay? So first, turn my scale on. You guys can see I've got a scale here, always measuring everything by weight. Because I like my dough balls a certain size. Just take a little bit of this out of here. I'm going to do about a 200 let's see what this is. 240 gram. Wow, look at that, right on the money. 240 gram dough ball. Okay, so you can get a piece of dough like this, and if you use the oil in this, kind of makes this dough feel. What's it feel like, Chef? More, a little less airy, because we use a little less water also. It feels more like Play-Doh than it does our typical 72-hour dough, because the oil kind of binds that gluten network together and lubes them up. That makes sense. To make this dough, the oil is going to make it a little bit softer when we bake it. And we notice that in our English muffins too. So for a dough ball, flour up in front of you, okay? And all I'm gonna do is pick this up and fold it into itself. You see that mouth, like that seam, and I turn it, and I grab each side of that seam and just lightly press it in, and then close it again. And then I turn, I grab each side, I follow this sequence about 15 or 20 times. I press in lightly. I'm not trying to rip and stretch the glutens. I'm just massaging it lightly and turn. So I press in and turn. And what I'm doing, see this smooth side here? I'm really tightening the skin of this dough. Okay, and I press in and close. Press in and close. Each time I do this, I'm getting a little bit of the air out, and I'm making this tighter and tighter without ripping it. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll put that smooth side into my palm, and now I can close this up. I can be a little aggressive on my close, okay? And I've got this beautiful dough ball that I will put into this deli. Seam side goes down. And this thing is gonna be ready in about 4 or 5 hours to bake it tonight. So now those glutens need to chill out and relax for several hours before it can be stretched out. All right, that's really important. Same thing if I bought store-bought dough. Divide it up and then make these balls and let it relax, and you'll see a world of difference in the stretchability of this dough later on, okay? This is serious stuff. Talking pizza at home, all right? All right, now, any more questions, Chef?
A couple of them.
Yep.
Starter versus yeast again. Would you still do 24 hours at room temp or go colder with the starter?
I would still do the same. I would still do maybe 8 to 12 hours at room temp, depending what time you go to bed. And then before you go to bed, cold.
What are those containers that you just put the dough into?
So these are called delis. We buy these at Restaurant Depot. Ziploc and Glad both make these. They have a blue cap and they twist and buy them at the market. They're 2 cups and they're awesome. They're reusable. You can use them for other things, but they're great for dough.
You put oil in that?
Yes, a little bit of olive oil on the bottom just helps that dough release when we make our pizzas.
Does the dough ball go into the fridge until dinner or stay at room temp?
Room temp. If I'm making this tonight, I'm gonna leave this out all day, 5 or 6 hours at room temperature. That'd be fine.
1 gram of yeast doesn't seem like much for 500 grams of flour.
It does not, you're right. It's but test it, you'll be shocked that it's plenty. It's plenty enough.
Is the container closed?
Yes, it is, airtight.
And then some people want you to show them how to ball up the dough again.
Ooh, let's do another one. All right, let's do it. All right, so I'm gonna cut up, let's see if I can do it again. I nailed it once. Looking for about 240 grams of dough. A little light, I think. 231, so I'm close. Make a little 9-gram piece here, stick that on the bottom. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is, because this dough is a little bit sticky, I always flour my hands first. So I pick this up, and I literally just fold it in half, okay? And I turn it one side. I'm gonna grab each side and press into that seam lightly, almost like a heart, and I'm gonna close it again. You can see? So then I turn, I grab each side, I press in, and I close. And each time I do this, I'm massaging the dough, I'm creating like a harder dough ball or a skin on this. I'm getting the skin tighter and tighter each time I do this. Press in and close and turn. Press in, close, and turn. Press in, close, and turn. And you can see this side is smooth like a baby's butt, okay? And I still have that seam out here. As it gets tighter and tighter, I'm gonna put that smooth side in my hand, and now I can be aggressive and pinch this thing closed, okay? I'm basically essentially trapping all those gluten strands inside of this dough, and I've made this beautiful ball, okay? I'll take the ball and I'll put it back into one of these delis. just like this. That's it, okay? Or I can just let it rest on a sheet tray covered up with plastic wrap and let it sit there all day and relax. And it takes, we find, about 3 or 4 hours before this dough becomes stretchable. It's just got, because I just, jammed all those glutens together. It's gonna take 3 or 4 hours for them to relax again at room temperature at around 70 degrees, 72 degrees. Chill out, and then we can make pizza, which what is gonna be our next step right now. Boom. Good? All right, we're moving on. So because we made the dough yesterday, I made another batch, and I made my balls early this morning. I'm gonna grab one. Just for fun, I've got a dough ball here, okay? I'm gonna make a pizza, but first, I guess I wanna take you through a couple of steps. This dough has been relaxing for like 3 or 4 hours. It was like 7 o'clock this morning, so 4.5. I'm preheating my oven with my baking steels inside. I'm top and bottom shelf. Preheat my oven at close to 500. I'm gonna, because I'm making a pizza now, it'll take me about 3 minutes to make a pizza. I'm gonna switch my oven to broil. Okay, and now I'm gonna show you how I stretch out a dough. And this dough is gonna be a little tougher than our typical 72-hour dough, but it's still really soft and supple. I'm gonna lightly just press into it. Make sure it doesn't stick. So I turn it over. I lightly press it again, right? And you can feel the oil in this dough. It's not gonna be as, I guess, relaxed as it, because the oil is kind of binding it together a little bit. And now I just kind of, using my hands like a steering wheel, not protruding through, I'm just kind of working around the perimeter and just stretching it out, right? And let gravity kind of do its thing. You can see it's almost there. I got about probably a 9 or 10 inch dough right here. You guys can see. I'm gonna go a little bit bigger. It looks pretty awesome. So I'm going a little bit bigger. My hands, you can see I'm just working around the perimeter, giving it a little tug, a little stretch. Trying to work consistently. It stretches consistent. We've got a nice, you can see, a nice 10-inch, 11-inch pizza here. Now, if my pizza paddle, I'm gonna take a little bit of flour and just dust it on, brush it over. I'm gonna grab a little bit of semolina flour, same thing. Those are my ball bearings. I'm gonna place my dough on top, okay? And before I do sauce, before I do cheese, I'm gonna make sure it slides like a hockey puck. That was awesome, right? Sliding, I'm confident. Let's sauce it up. And when we sauce our pizza, we gotta remember, less is more. So I sauce all around the edge. I bring it close to the edge, but I don't go over the edge, just like life, right? And less is more. It's a nice, I'm gonna put a little bit more sauce into it. I like to use this all up. Probably a little heavy on the sauce, but that's okay. I might use a little oregano underneath. I'm gonna make my kids a little lunch here. A little oregano. Smells awesome, right, Chef? You smell that? So for the cheese, I'm using a little fontina today. Let's get a nice cup. And I'm just going to do some grading. My Wonder Shredder, let's kind of grade this up.
You see those are back in stock, $125 for a 3-pack?
On eBay?
No, on their site.
What?
Yeah.
Can we get on there? You can see, got a little cheese. Not a lot. Less is more, right? Not a lot. Boom. That's it. Now, before I go into the oven, I'm gonna give it a shake again. See how it's still loose like a hockey puck? That's ideal. Let's hope my broiler is on now in my oven. is, launch it up, back and forth, boom. Timer it. I'm gonna put my timer on 2 minutes, just so I can check it out. And maybe after 2 minutes, I'm gonna turn the broiler off and just finish baking it for maybe 2 minutes more. We'll have a nice 4-minute pizza on our baking steel with this overnight crust. It's gonna be awesome. Can anybody join us today? A little taste test. Chef, anybody? Any questions?
Yes. What size dough ball for 14 to 16 inch pizza?
So when we do our 16-inch pizzas, we're probably looking at 450 grams, which is kind of double what we typically do. That's a big pizza, and they're really good. And we use our Baking Steel Pro round one for that, because those are awesome.
Oven temperature right now?
Is at 500 with the broiler on. And we're cooking it for 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, I'm gonna open up the oven, maybe rotate my pizza a little bit, turn the broiler off, and finish baking it at 500 for maybe 2 more minutes. Oh, yeah, burning.
Having tips for salvaging a pizza that doesn't slide like a hockey puck?
Ooh, yes. So if my dough's on here, you guys can see, and it won't slide anymore. What I'll do is I'll pick up that edge underneath it and make sure it's not unstuck. Once I get it unstuck, I just toss some more flour underneath it like this, basically recreating those ball bearings underneath. Think ball bearings. All about ball bearings. Did I answer that?
How long of a preheat?
1 hour preheat with the steel. Highly recommend at least 1 hour.
Surface temperature of the baking steel?
Oh, can I pause?
Yes.
Let's take a peek. I'm gonna take a peek here. Let's see what this looks like. Let's see what we got here. So it's been a good 2 minutes. Our undercrust looks pretty good. Top looks nice. I'm not sure the broiler was on the whole time. That's okay. 2 more minutes. I'm gonna turn the broiler off and we'll be good. I'm not sure the broiler ever went on, but that's okay. I'm gonna turn this off anyway.
I'm brand new to pizza making.
Okay.
I did buy a baking steel.
Welcome.
Haven't made anything yet. How necessary is the 2 steel method?
Not necessary at all. In fact, you can see here I'm only using 1 steel purposely. I only need 1 steel because I'm making 1 pizza. 2 steels come in really handy when we're making multiples at a time. So if I had to make 7 or 8 pizzas today, or even 5 or 6, I would use 2 steels. I would basically launch one on top. After 2 minutes, move that to the bottom, and then put a new one on top. And I would continue that cycle until all my pizzas are made. For 1 or 2, 1 steel is all you need. Even 3 or 4, 1 steel is all you need.
Can you tell us the process for heating the steel in the oven, switching the back and forth the broiler, which shelf, etc.?
So I preheated my oven for 1 hour. When I had my dough just about stretched out, I was stretching my dough out, I switched the oven to broiler because I know my broiler takes about 5 minutes to kick on. So what I do is that as that's kicking on, I'm making my pizza. Then when I open my oven up, I almost can peek and make sure my broiler's on before I launch it. I didn't do that today, but typically I'll look and make sure my pizza broiler is on, then I'll launch. And I only use the broiler for, in this oven, 2 minutes. Anything more than that, I'm gonna burn the top of the pizza. So we find 2 minutes to be a pretty good sweet spot.
Do you prefer 24 or 72 hour dough?
I love 72 hours. I think it's unmatched. It's tough to beat. But you know, in a taste test, some people might prefer the 24 hour. It's a little different texture, right? So really it depends on what you like. I recommend at least 24 hours of fermentation though, because that's gonna help the gluten break down a little bit and make it easier to digest on our system. All breads, all pizza doughs at least 24 hours. Much better on your system to digest. So I recommend that for all pizza, all bread.
Do you ever use convection?
Yep. In fact, when I went back off the broiler, I put it back on convection. In fact, our timer's up. See this thing? This looks really awesome. So you can see, you can see, if you guys can see this, I'll try to hold it up pretty quick. Boom. Boom. Isn't that beautiful? Hot. Be careful. Underneath, you can see, you can hold it up really nicely. The bottom's cooked really pretty. Top, nice, crisp. Boom. Can knock it. Right? Beautiful. Hot. Ouch. But gorgeous as far as a pizza goes. Really pretty. Got some nice bubbles in it. Got some nice color. It's going to be amazing. Can't wait to dive in. In fact, I'm going to feed my kids for lunch. They are my best critics because they don't like it. They tell me, believe me, just quite often. Anyway, looks awesome. Any other questions?
Yeah, we got 2 more.
All right, let's do it.
Difference between round steel and square steel.
Size, really size. We have a 16-inch round, which is a 1/4 inch or 3/8, and just bigger. So you can make bigger pizzas, and bigger pizzas are fun. But you're looking at 450 grams of dough versus 250 grams of dough. It's a big difference to handle and stretch. So we call it the Pro Pack because it's a little bit more advanced to make that size. Other than that, that's the only real difference in size. Just keep in mind, most people have pizza peels. These are all about 14 inches wide. Everyone that you see at Amazon, at the kitchen shops, they're almost standard 14 inches. So we made a 16-inch peel for our Pizza Pro. Massive. Makes a big difference, but it's good. It's fun making the big ones.
And last, but certainly not least, let's do Mr. Chris.
Drum roll.
Cooking multiple pizzas. Do you pre-stretch all your dough? Do you stretch one at a time as the other one's cooking? What's your method?
That's a great question. If I'm doing multiples, like for a party, my dream setup for that is 2 steels, one on top, one on bottom. And let's say I need to make them fast. I have pre-stretched my dough a little bit. That does give you a little head start. So I might take 3 or 4 doughs, stretch them out about 70%, leave them kind of covered with flour on my table. So then I can just do a quick, finish the stretch out, top, and launch. With that said, I'm only launching one at a time. I'm going to launch one on the top steel, bake it for 2 minutes with the broiler on. After 2 minutes, move it to the bottom steel, make my next pizza, launch that on the top steel, which is now empty. After 2 minutes, remove the bottom one out and move the top to the bottom. You can see the cycle. I'll follow that pattern. And we can make a lot of pizzas in 10 or 15 minutes. And usually that's enough, in my case, to feed everybody and get those done. So 2 steels, one at a time, top to bottom, top to bottom. And watch it, get a bird dog. It's a lot of work, it sure is. Anybody else? And that concludes our Zoom for today. We're gonna record this, it's actually being recorded. We're gonna send it off to our Facebook and our YouTube channel. You guys, hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, drop us in the comments below. We hope you liked it. And again, thank you guys. We couldn't do this without you. We are super grateful. We're amazed by you guys every week. If you have any special requests, just let us know. And we'll see you next week. Out. Thanks, guys. Thank you.